Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman, and today we have two co-founders with us. Welcome, Kristin Leary and Dr. Carolyn Dunham-Schroeter to Radio Entrepreneurs.
Hi, good
Thank you
morning.
for having us. Good
morning.
Thank you.
You are the founders of DouglassWeek. Tell our listeners a little bit about DouglassWeek and what the genesis of the idea was.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Good morning or hello, listeners. Well, Douglas Week is an annual event series that celebrates the enduring inspiration of Frederick Douglass and other changemakers around the world. And we like to promote the sort of global collaboration and co-creation, intercultural, let's say, exchange and engagement. And one of our biggest goals, I would say, Kristin, is bringing together people to discuss history and creativity and activism, art. And so each year we host a full week of events, so talks and walks and conversations, performances, and lots of other events created by the community, and all really to honor Frederick Douglass or other change makers, on a local level, national, international level. And we really love showcasing people doing interesting stuff and important work and how they are inspired by Frederick Douglass and his life. And I can tell you a little bit about how Douglas Week started if you're interested, Jonathan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for benefit of our listeners, a little history lesson wouldn't hurt either.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute too. Absolutely. So about Douglas Week, so I was doing my PhD in academia in Ireland a couple of years ago, and I was finishing around 2020, just before the COVID pandemic hit. And I was teaching at the University College Cork, UCC in Ireland, and I was surprised how little my students knew about the history of Frederick Douglass coming to Ireland. And it was the 175th anniversary of Douglass traveling to Ireland. And I was so inspired and, struck by the history of Douglass coming there and how little it was known. So I talked with others and I started organizing a symposium, really like an evening event. And we really quickly discovered that there was so much interest for just way too much programming for a day. And there we were. We expanded into Douglas Week, and 5 years later, it's our 5th anniversary this year. So 5 years later, we're here still full week of programming and events. And let me just finish by saying that our first Douglas Week was really taking place online because of the pandemic. And so it was all online and virtual. And we kept that programming aspect so that we have these resources online for everyone to enjoy and share. But while we first were in Cork and in Ireland with contributions from all over Ireland, we expanded our program and outreach each year. And I know that this show highlights and engages with entrepreneurs. So I think we kind of, Kristin, I don't know if you agree, but I think that we've developed Douglas Week kind of like a startup, really, learning as we go and bringing our own skills in there. And so from Cork or Ireland, we went to DC and Rochester and to Belfast, and now we're going to Boston. So we travel where Douglas traveled. And I'm going to hand over to Kristin here to add something. Kristin, if you want to.
Yeah, I'll just say startup is a good a continuing startup, which I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate to. It's it's a constant evolution, but that's a lot of what makes it fun. And as Caroline said, there are so many people who are inspired by the story of Frederick Douglass in different places. All of the things that he did. I don't know, Jonathan, you mentioned history lesson. A lot of people know the name Frederick Douglass and know that he was an advisor to President Lincoln and a civil rights icon. Many consider him the father or grandfather of the civil rights movement in the United States. But he was a newspaper writer and publisher. He was an orator. He was a statesman. He was, again, an advisor to President Lincoln and actually 2 other presidents. And he has a very interesting and varied history in Massachusetts, which is the first place he lived in freedom. He was enslaved in Maryland and escaped to New Bedford originally, and then eventually lived in Lynn for a long time with his family. Well, for a few years with his family. So anyway, that's a little bit of history.
So you had the concept, the idea of bring people together, common interests, etc. Tell us a little bit about the evolution of the festivities and the celebrations. And you mentioned that they're happening in various places where Douglass either lived or visited. Tell us about the scale. You started this in Cork, obviously a difficult time while the pandemic was going on. Are you registering? Well, may be hard to tell because there's so many different events going on, but in the thousands of people that are participating, tens of thousands. Tell us a little bit about the scale and how that's evolved for you, and as entrepreneurs and founders, how you've managed that process as well.
I will start with that, and then I'll have Caroline jump in and talk about our online presence, which is something we've really focused on just because we had to, as you mentioned originally. But I'd say, first of all, we did a preview event in Martha's Vineyard at the end of June of this year, and we were really gratified and excited about the response in terms of people coming to listen to that program, which was a conversation between a Douglass descendant, Kenneth B. Morris Jr., who is a great grandson of Frederick Douglass, and incidentally, the great grandson of Booker T. Washington. Great grandson of Booker T. Washington. And
Wow,
Dr.
that's some impressive lineage.
Yeah, we're lucky to be working a lot with the family, with Kenneth and his mom, the very well named Nettie Washington Douglass. But our event at Martha's Vineyard was a conversation between Kenneth and Dr. Noelle Trent, who we're very fortunate to count among our partners for Douglass Week this fall. She is the president CEO of the Museum of African American History, and with sites in Boston and Nantucket. So it was a conversation between the two of them about the history of the Douglass family in Massachusetts. And I'm getting to your question, which was we had about a little over 100 people at that event at Martha's Vineyard, and I'd say we're constantly growing our in-person audience. But I'll let Caroline talk a little bit about the resources that we try to provide online.
Yeah, thank you, Kristin, and thanks for the question. I think that since the beginning of Douglass Week, our events had changed from online to in person, and our entire programming slowly but surely changed and grew and developed. So we keep the online presence, which is, on the one hand, a really helpful resource, like I said earlier, but also we are able to bring in international audiences and researchers and artists. And so the numbers you were asking really vary from, like Kristin said, 100 people in person to a couple of thousand watching online. So, and then the numbers over time grew as well. So we've had, at one point, we had a really wonderful support by people online in the beginning that really boosted, our presence. And it really is also about the participation from local communities. And so it really varies, but we are very grateful and very happy to say that we have been constantly growing since 2020. And we are already noticing that people are very, very interested in our Boston event. So at this point, love to shout out an invitation there for people to join us. And we can talk about it too, how people can get involved if you're interested.
Yeah. That would be wonderful. I just want to follow up in terms of, because you talked about entrepreneurship and the constant, for the two of you, programming, logistics, volunteers, I would imagine, large cadre of volunteers, people are very passionate about it. Funding on some level, need to raise. So are you both involved in all of that and sort of in the startup realm of juggling all those many hats every day?
Yeah, I was going to say you can keep on going because yes, we are involved in every aspect, and I'll just say, just because you mentioned them, we are encouraging people to get in touch with us, to volunteer in person, to attend our events, and of course, again, to echo what you just said, we're always looking for financial support as well, either for Douglass Week and our programming as a whole, or for specific events.
Yeah, and I wanted to add, if I may, Jonathan, in 2021, we founded a US-based 501c3 nonprofit called the Globe Lane Initiative. And we have a team of 11 fantastic, or actually 13 at this point, wonderful board members from Ireland, from the UK, from Germany, from the US, from all over the place. And so we have this wonderful team that supports, everything we do. And we work really, because like I said at the beginning, we really believe in the co-creation, the collaboration. And so that's really what it is. And you mentioned at the beginning, this is a team effort. And so, we've been working with our team to create this event series and develop it with a team, but also with, and I can't stress this enough, Douglass Week really lives because people get involved and people bring their inspiration and people talk to us about how they are inspired and what they would love to see, or artists approach us. And so this is why there's a lot of unique stuff that has been produced, based on Douglass and his life. So it really is it's a co-effort and it's a co-creation, the whole thing.
Fantastic. Why don't you tell us about the upcoming event in Boston, the dates and the timing of it, and then if people want to get involved, I don't know if it's too late for this year, but engage with you and learn more about Douglass Week and the various activities, events, and things that they can get involved with. Why don't you tell us how they can contact you?
Thank you. Yes, first of all, it's not too late to be involved. So
never too late.
Yeah, it's never too late, which is what we tell our team members as well. It's like everyone pitches in on everything, and we welcome others as well. Again, either for in-person events or for online help, whatever someone's skill set is or interest is, please get in touch with us. But coming up in Boston and the Boston area, Douglass Week runs for a true week, which is this year, it's September 28th to October 4th. We are in the process of developing the programming, but some of the things we already have planned include another conversation at the Museum of African American History in Boston, at least 2 Reading Frederick Douglass Together events. We have a wonderful partnership with the organization Mass Humanities. In fact, just a shout out to them, they sent a 10-person delegation to Douglass Week last year, Douglass Week 2024, which was, as Caroline mentioned, in Belfast in Northern Ireland. And it was fantastic to have them there and just kind of a really nice, another sort of preview because we knew we would be in Massachusetts this year. So that's been a wonderful partnership. And they put on Reading Frederick Douglass Together programming every year throughout the Commonwealth. So we'll have a few events with them. They're also putting together a trip to New Bedford, which is, as I mentioned before, a very important part of the Frederick Douglass and Anna Murray Douglass story and the Douglass family. We'll have almost a full day there in New Bedford exploring the places that were important to the Douglass family there. We'll have a conversation with a local historian and a local artist in Lynn, with another partner, the Lynn Museum and Arts Center. As I say, that was another place the Douglass family lived. And then a couple of other things that we're working on, including some of our core programming that as we've grown and evolved and figured out how this thing might work, as most startups do, we've got a couple of core events that we've incorporated into the past few Douglass Weeks, including this one. And Caroline can talk about sort of our main culminating event.
Yeah, thank you, Kristin. I think it just brief note there to say that, we'll have events in the educational sort of sector. We'll work with educators, which we've been doing all along. We'll work with artists from the area, but also artists from Ireland. We're working with specific curators. We've had a really successful roundtable called Curating Activism. We'll do lots of the things that Kristin said that we have done in the past, and some of the ones that Kristin just outlined are new ones. So every year we add new things that are based on the location where we are. And that's a good note there, Kristin, to say our week always ends in Harmonies of Freedom, which is a performance evening. And we're very lucky to call 2 musical stars, Broadway stars, 2 of our very good friends, but also board members. And we have a fantastic music team. And so during Harmonies of Freedom, we celebrate Douglass and his family in word and song. And we're fortunate to have these artists and longtime contributors and also local artists. So once again, we'll collaborate and partner with artists in Boston, but also bring people in from all over. And it's always a very inspiring event. And we look forward to sharing with everyone because there's unique music coming out this year. And I can't tell you more right now. You'll have to come to Harmonies of Freedom on the last day of Douglass Week in October.
Fantastic. So I see hashtag Douglass Week, obviously all over social media. We can find you. Is there a website people can go to for more information as well?
Yeah.
.org. Sorry.
Fantastic. DouglassWeek.org. Wonderful. Kristin Leary and Dr. Caroline Dunham-Schroeter, co-founders of Douglass Week. It's been a pleasure having you on Radio Entrepreneurs. Wish you continued success with your endeavors and with your upcoming event.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Thank you for
Thanks, Naz.
And we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.